Okay.
So it's in the media that they say there are two things you never, or three things possibly, you never can bank on: working with children, animals, and technology. Any one of those things goes wrong.
What about oldies? Hi, Rachel. So good to see you.
Oh.
Rachel is muted.
Hello.
It's so good to see you, Rachel, and welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so we'll give it maybe another 3 to 4 minutes, and then we'll start. So really general chit chat. Again, we're really pleased to have you, Dr. Tadria, on here. I don't know how much we can express that pleasure to have you here, and anyone who is who's joining us. It's always a pleasure to listen to people who've walked the journey ahead of us. I personally just enjoy it so much. Even if, whether you know the person or not, there's always something from the story that we can pick that's a parallel to our own lives. So I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Okay, so we have a couple more people joining. And I think as we wait for maybe 2 or 3 minutes until we start officially, the people who've joined, please type in the chat, or either unmute and tell us some of the things you're hoping you'll get to hear in today's session, just so we can break the ice a little bit.
Yeah, that'll be good.
So you can tell us a few things that you'd like to hear from the session today. And as we wait, Sanyu, sorry, Dr. Tadria.
I said I'll be writing. We always use notebooks.
Don't worry, I always have a notebook with me.
Ah, good.
I have I think about 6 or 7 notebooks I use at any one time. So for any purpose, then I grab the right notebook.
Yeah.
And I never want to be caught up with the wrong notebook at a place that I'm meant to be at. So
exactly.
I know all about notebooks.
Welcome to the oldies club.
I like to think about it as not as oldies club, but as I think it's for people who love to write. I think the notebooks as well, but it helps with jogging the memory. It helps, definitely helps.
I mean, I see the way young people use phones to make notes, to do this, and I just can't make notes on my phone.
I tried it when the smartphones first came out. I got these apps for notes, and I tried it, but I found they were really good. You could do things in real time. However, the phone always looks the same, whereas with notebooks, you remember that this page has a stain, so that's why I need to look for this information. This page has a here, over here. So I chucked all of that and went back to the old notebook.
Yeah.
You are not alone.
Yeah. And I think one of the, as I think we've got maybe a minute or so, but on the topic of notebooks that I just remembered is about 4 or 5 years ago, I was getting married, and as soon as my current husband proposed and I accepted, because it took me maybe a week or 2 to accept the proposal, as soon as I accepted, one of my first actions was go to the bookshop and get a notebook so I can plan.
So it has a history.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's now 5 past. We'll start with, again, a welcome to everyone. Good morning, all the people who've joined us. We have more ladies and gentlemen joining us as we go through the session today. We have our guest, Dr. Hilda Tadria, whom we are very, very, very happy to host today. And your host today, as a slight deviation from the previous 2 sessions we've had where Akusa Batwala has been host, I am hosting Sophia Chibdige, again from the year of 1991, Gaya's High School. So for all of our regular attendees, you're very welcome. You know the structure of this and the reason for it. For our new guests, for new participants, it's a way to sit at the feet of our parents, to listen to what they've done, what they've experienced, with the hope that we learn something, even if it's just a single lesson that we can use and improve our own lives. So this is a general chat. It's a relaxed and informal chat with whoever guest we have. And this time around, we have Dr. Hilda Tadria. And previously, we've had a parent who happened to be my mother, bless her. She accepted to be the very first guest, and Honorable Victoria Sech-Toleko. And from them, we picked up a lot of their own life lessons, which I hope we can look at and incorporate in our own lives, whatever it is, at least even if it's to strengthen us as we face the challenges that life has got. So we've had the 5 minutes to settle. Just to remind, we are recording this session. Many times our colleagues cannot join the session, and they request that we have something available for them. So, and if anyone is not comfortable with the recording, unfortunately, the only option you have is to leave, but otherwise we'll be recording so we can share this with our colleagues and anyone who missed out. People still have to work during the Saturdays, and we don't want them to miss out. And then we'll go through the chat with Dr. Tadria. And towards the end, we will let all our participants know who our next guest is. I would say, the team that I work with to organize this has been doing a fantastic job scouring the country, scouring the world for our guests to join us. And we're excited about the lineup that we have coming up in the next few months. We are really, really excited because they've been doing a great job. So we'll tell you each month as we go through who we have next. So on today's session, 22nd of January, we are slightly later than our regular times, which tends to be the first or second weekend of the month. For the simple reason that it was back to school. We didn't want to overwhelm ourselves as well as our intended audience with preparing children for school and then attending this, which is supposed to be a relaxed, informal chit chat. So we delayed it so we can have your attention and your participation with no distractions of preparing children for school. So Dr. Tadria, you are very welcome to our session, Pearls of Wisdom. And as it says, it's pearls, because anyone who has walked a journey before us will have some pearls that they've picked up, either intentionally, accidentally, or by whatever means that they took to pick up these pearls. And we're here to harvest as many as we can from Dr. Hilda Tadria. And before I welcome her to start to tell us a bit about herself, I will go over her bio. It's a mini bio to tell us a little bit about who she is and what she's done. And then we can delve into the conversation. So Dr. Hilda Mary Tadria is a feminist activist, founder, and the first executive director of MEMPRAL, an organization based in Uganda that builds the capacity of young women, focusing on increasing their opportunities for school retention and better performance within the institutions of learning, as well as their leadership. As a feminist, her work has also focused on advocacy for prevention of sexual and gender-based violence and promotion of girls and women's rights. Dr. Tadria is also the co-founder of African Women's Development Fund, that's the AWDF, an African-wide fund raising and grant-making organization for all African women. She's also the founder of ACFOD in Uganda. She has a degree in sociology from the University of East Africa, a master's degree in social anthropology from Cambridge University, England, and a doctorate degree in social anthropology and women's studies from the University of Minnesota in the USA. Dr. Tadria has wide professional experience. She served as an associate professor at Makerere University, was coordinator of Women in Development Program at the East and Southern African Management Institute, that's ISAMI, for many of us who know it as ISAMI, She worked as regional advisor on economic empowerment of women at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, that's UNECA, where she provided policy advice and training in gender responsive planning for African governments and UN agencies, as well as non-governmental organizations. She has also served as a consultant, as well as an advisor and board member on several national, regional, and international organizations. So with a list as long as that, we also add she's got a family and lots of grandchildren. So she's got 2 children and 6 grandchildren. So Dr. Tadria, welcome, welcome, welcome. So let's start with something that we hope to get out in the air. You often are introduced as a feminist, and this is a word that gets many people ticked off in one way or another, but some of them take it as a negative thing. Anti-men, anti-family, all those things negative. Why do you, what do you say about that? The people who take it in a negative sense?
Now you are touching my soft spot. Let me say, Sanyu, I hope you don't mind. I sent my bio and put myself as a feminist activist. And when it came back, feminist had been deleted. Sanyu, I wrote back and I said, please put back the word feminist. And it is intentional for me. It is intentional because it defines the work I have done the whole of my life. It defines my core value system of equality, of fighting for human rights, and of understanding that I'm not on this journey alone. And so part of my naming myself is to make sure that hopefully when young people look at Dr. Tadria and they see I'm not crazy, and I see that I was happily married for 46 years, and they see I have actually a functioning family, and they see that I'm not angry, hopefully they see a positive identity of what a feminist looks like. And I'm seeing some of my young mentees. I see Stella, I see Lillian, I see Daphne, and I know they are walking in my footsteps because I hope I have been a good role model of what a feminist looks like. And so I'm glad you started this question because it will define most of my answers as I speak. So let me start from the beginning. And so you indulge me on this question because once we've done with this one, everything will be easy for me, right?
Yes, please, go ahead.
A kind of trying to clarify, not just me, but what does a feminist stand for? What drives our work? And I want to start by saying every single right, Sophia, and all the young women and men in this who are here, every single right you have is part of somebody having fought for them. There is no question about that. And by the way, Sophie, I was really fascinated by how brave your mom is because I sat in for the 2 hours. And I was picking the fighting spirit. That fighting spirit is the feminist spirit that we talk about. But the misconception is what I'm going to try and define. So what do we do? First of all, we fight for certain outcomes. The right of all citizens, women and men, to access, control, own resources and opportunities. That's our major feminist agenda. To do it in violence-free, environments. That's part of what we fight for. We fight for the right to voice. And let me, for every woman here who has sat in a meeting and you have said something and it's not been heard, and then a certain gentleman appropriates it exactly the way you mean it, but using different words, and it's quickly understood, and it becomes the plan. Your voice has been taken away, but said by a different person, it gets value. So what we also fight for is putting value on what women say and what women do. That's what we fight for. But to do this, we also analyze, and I think what distinguishes, and why I keep insisting on being called a feminist, what distinguishes an activist, and Vicky, my sister, will recognize it, is knowing, yeah, there is something wrong, but really, me, I'm comfortable where I am, so I'm going to do nothing about it. What distinguishes a feminist is that you know what is wrong, you know why it is wrong, and you are going to do something about it. And now imagine you start saying to the gentleman in the house, you know this house belongs to both of us. You know this land belongs to both of us. You know my daughter is going to have equal rights the same as my son. You are questioning standing social rules. And the minute you start questioning standing long accepted rules of engagement of social relations between men and women, you will be angry because you'll see injustice. And I tell people, I'm not angry, but I'm an enraged feminist because I see injustice. If you see injustice and you are not enraged, or if you are enraged and you do nothing, you still have a route to go into feminist activism. And that's what we do. We shout. We shout to be heard because, as I told you, you sit at the table, you see something very clearly, say it very clearly, and no one will hear you. So you have to repeat yourself, or you have to fight the man who is appropriating your idea. And then you know what they start saying? Ah, she's aggressive. That woman is very aggressive.
Yes.
The man who is standing up to lead is very ambitious. The woman who is standing up to lead, she's very abrasive, very aggressive, very toxic. So even the language used about how women do their work is negative, because in people's mind, you are going against the rules of having a quiet voice. Vicky and I, we are loud. Vicky, I hope you don't mind, but we have to be loud because we are feminists. We need to be heard. When I work with young women, what I tell them is, you don't get heard, you don't make change. So that's what feminist work does. Let me tell you the results in feminist work in Uganda. Sarah Ntiro fought for equal pay, and no one knows it. She came from Oxford with men. They were all teachers. She quickly found out men from Oxford, same university, she was even cleverer than I am. I'm quite sure about that. Were having a higher salary than she did. She actually she was at Gayaza and told the teacher, I'm resigning and going back to Hoima. I have this story because she told me personally. When I was telling her she's a great feminist, she said, I'm going to resign because I have the same qualifications. I'm not getting the same pay. And soon after, a governor's wife visited Gayaza and asked to talk to her. And Sarah told her, I would rather go home, work for nothing, than be paid less than my equal compatriots. Do you think politeness would have got her equal pay? No. She spoke out. She made sure. She threatened. And for a long time, people thought Sarah was a difficult person. It's because she knew her rights. It's because she spoke out. It's because she challenged systems. Let me bring this closer to home because I know there was a question about we are anti-men, we are anti-family. So in analyzing, trying to understand where inequality is, trying to understand where inequality is, the balance will show you where it is. And so when you start fighting against the system of privileges, guess what the bruising is? Because there are people, imagine one individual, there's somebody who wakes up at 5 o'clock to prepare his children, to prepare his breakfast, to cook his meals, and then they go together to work. Who do you think will fight against upsetting that level of privilege? And what I'm saying is not what I haven't heard. I know there are women who have told me the husband wants to eat katogo of bienda for breakfast before going to work, and it has to be cooked freshly. When do you think and by the wife, who do you think will wake up at 5 o'clock to cook that bienda? And so who do you think is going to stand up and say, this system is not working well for me? I want some change. And the minute you start wanting change in the fundamental system of power and privilege, inequality, access, inaccess, you become an enemy of the system. The first person to tell you off will be your mother. The next person to tell you off will be your sister, your mother-in-law. Then they will say, you see, even your mother-in-law thinks you are not right. And so when you take this fight on, you can't do it alone. You start talking to sisters. That's why really personally start organizations. And Vicky was there when we started Akford. I brought the idea and brought in women because the fight for girls and women's rights cannot be an individual cause. Now, when you sit in Kampala, you've gone to university, you have got great parents, maybe my kind of parents, Vicky kind of parents, you are in a comfort zone. You move out, even 50 kilometers out of Kampala. You find a girl who gets up at 4 o'clock to fetch water for her brother, to wash clothes for her brother. Her brother goes to school in time at 8. The girl goes to school at 10 o'clock because she started with housework. Tell me you don't want to speak about that. You have a wife who goes to the garden, grows the food, the man comes and sells it, drinks the money, comes home sometimes with a second wife. Tell me you don't want to speak about it. And that is okay with you. So if it's okay with you, it's okay. But if it's not okay with me, I will speak about it and I will work for change. And today we have change in equal pay. We have domestic relations bill. We have affirmative action. And I know there are people here who will say, yes, Akford fought for affirmative action. And sometimes I get so sad when I hear people saying, we don't want affirmative action. because they have already been beneficiaries of affirmative action. Now they don't want it. So the work of a feminist is to understand that the ground level is unequal, is to understand that we are born equal. We are entitled to rights. We are entitled to access to opportunities, to resources, and we fight for it. That's the work of a feminist. That's not the work of I have done the whole of my life. If there is something wrong with that picture, I'm very happy with it.
Thank you.
So I can have questions of clarity, but feminist work has been misunderstood because we fight the systems of oppression. We fight for voice, and we fight for sitting at the table and having our work recognized because it has value.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. It's a challenge to unpack all of that, but I think to put it into perspective, anyone who's joined us in the last few minutes, we've got Dr. Tadria, who's just been explaining to us what she does as a feminist and activist. If you missed that bit, pick it up when we share the video, because it's absolutely amazing. There'll be time for questions. Either raise your hand and we can have the questions as we go along, or we can type it in the chat. Dr. Tadria is looking for participation from all of you ladies and gentlemen who've joined. Please do participate. If you've got any questions, raise your hands and we will get her to respond to either your comments or your questions. It is a chat with Dr. Tadria. So to take you back a little bit, because it's something that we felt very strongly that we should ask you straight away, because so we don't leave people waiting until they hear your response to why you want to be called a feminist. And I think for some people, it's like as the British might say, you throw the baby out with the bath water. That when we fight what you call the systems of oppression, we throw out even anything related to those systems where some people who've come out as feminists perhaps have then thrown up relationships with men. They have left marriages because they realize they have a path or a fight to take on, which sometimes then gets society up in arms against people who call themselves feminists, because the balance is upturned perhaps not fairly, and disadvantaging both the activist as well as the people around them, because they've perhaps not quite stabilized how they should go about their activism. So we'll take you back a little bit, Dr. Tadria. You mentioned having parents like yours and Honorable Statutory Commissioner parents like hers, who perhaps provided a privileges and opportunities that other women around the continent will not have. Is there anything from your childhood that you feel prepared you for this life of feminism and activism? What was your childhood like, and what lessons did you pick from your parents?
Sophia.
Yes.
Let me just retrace back. You talked about feminists breaking marriages. That's because they are brave people. I have seen women battered, abused, physically, sexually, mentally, and their parents tell them, please, Guma. You know that story?
Yes.
Guma. Feminists break marriages because they understand their rights. It's not because they are bad people. No. I have witnessed women with chopped hands in the areas I work, and the parents say, go back. There's something wrong with that picture. I love marriage, but marriage works when you're happy in it.
Yes.
The rest is providing a service. And that's, for me, is not marriage.
No, I
So
think,
let's move on to my parents.
yes. No, I'll just clarify, Dr. Tadria, can I just clarify? I think it didn't come out right. What I meant by the
Okay.
break marriages are the ones who they themselves write off getting married because they feel they are feminists, not that they empower the women who are in terribly oppressive marriages to step out and leave that oppression. It's where they then, even before they get married, they say, I'm never getting married because men are this or the other. That's the one, those are the ones I was referring to.
Okay, so to make it clear, that is not feminism.
Yeah, but that's the one people tend to hear about, which gives it feminism.
That's very not, but that's not feminism. To say I'm not going to get married is not simply just saying I'm a feminist, therefore I'm not getting married. So I just want to make clear that there is a line between what people say and what feminism is.
Yes.
Just because women say I don't want to get married doesn't mean they are feminists. And just because they are feminists and say they don't want to get married doesn't mean they are bad feminists. It means there is something they are seeing that they are not happy with. But so let me go back to my parents. The next question. I think I can describe my parents as kind people. And I want to emphasize kind because sometimes you wonder where kindness has gone for parents. When a parent can beat a child to death for stealing 50 cents, 1,000 shillings. So I really was brought up with kind, loving parents. I only saw my father beat a child once in my life. And that child had been accused of stealing from a visitor, and it was a lie. So my father hated thieves and liars. So he beat that child so badly, but that's the only time I ever saw my father beat a child. So they were kind. My father, a traditional man, would literally cry when he sees a child cry. And he would make sure that his children don't cry. My mother was plucked from Gayaza High School. She was one of the first, she was the first woman to go to Gayaza High School in 1940. She went home for holidays, 16 years, got married. But she learned to be a leader in her own right. She was actually a national leader by the time she died. And because of the two being gentle, caring people, we had freedom in the home. We had freedom. We were 11 children, 6 boys, 5 girls. My father would sit and adjudicate debates between the daughters and the sons. And eventually he would say, my daughters have beaten you. And so you grow up in an environment where there were no limitations. My brothers cooked with us. My parents made sure my brothers and we cooked together. We fetched firewood together. And as I'm saying this, people might be thinking I came from a very privileged school. No, I was from a village in Kanungu. I climbed the hills and mountains to walk to school, but with loving parents. And I think for me, being loved, being empowered, being encouraged, I never faced any negative vibes in my life as a child, any. And I think that's what has defined me as a person. Then part of what has defined my work, and I know that's a question that is in the question list, I watched my mother, married at 16, 11 children, 1 year of education at Gayaza, but she transformed it to work with women. My mother worked with women the whole of her life, and in that process brought me in. During my holidays from Gayaza, my job was to teach the women in her club reading and writing. Just that. And then we added nutrition and hygiene. So I started as a child watching what my mother do. but watching the way they behave with each other, they would argue. But my mother was never down. My mother never put my mother down for speaking out, for being contrary, bringing a contrary idea. And I quite believe that my mother built my father. My father was smart, but my mother built my father. That's my home environment.
Thank you. So your mother started off working with the women in the community. Did you ever find out what drew her to start doing this work with them, and eventually getting you into that work? Or were your other siblings also involved in that work?
Well, let me start with siblings. I think my advantage is that I was the second child, daughter, among 4 boys. So I automatically was closer to my mother. I was like her assistant. Actually, most of my siblings, if they could confess, they know I brought them up with my mother. So I was like her assistant. I remember my mother, whenever a woman in the village delivered, we would cook, and she and I would go visit, and I'm seeing these one, literally I was babies, and how she taught them, how she talked to them, but also in a sense, how 1 year at Gayaza made her an educated woman in her village, a highly educated woman in the village. In being in Gayaza in 1940s was not a joke. So she was seen as an educated person in her village. And so she became a feminist. And I don't want to say by accident, but because she cared about women. She started going to their homes, teaching them how to look after their babies, teaching them about rights. Actually, she taught to women about rights. And when she died, women spoke about how she gave them dignity in their homes. Would she have called herself a feminist? Probably no. But the whole of her life, she did feminist work, and I watched. But she brought me in also because from Gayaza on holiday, we were never allowed to go anywhere else except home. From Gayaza, we went home, even when it was in the village, which we loved so much. So I went with her everywhere. She organized communities. I remember many of you, a few of you like Victoria, remember Mrs. Nekion. Florence Nekion, in her young age at Community Development Office, visited my mother to check on how community work. And people began to realize she was bringing visitors from all the way from Kampala into their community. A governor visited her garden of vegetables she was showing women to improve their nutrition. So people started putting value on her work, and she looked me in. And actually, as far as I know, growing up, there was no other work worth doing except doing work with women, because I saw how my mother did it. It made her happy, and it made other women happy.
Okay, very interesting, because I think it's giving me some reflections that we often pick up what we see in our homes and it will affect us in different ways. So for you, caring about making changes in women's lives and girls' lives has come very much from your own youth, as you've explained. And
Yeah.
have you passed those lessons on to your children?
Well, I see none of my children is so I can talk about them. Let me say, one of the things that when I was doing this work, and I know that I'm also going to answer a question you asked earlier. You will ask later because it's in the list. So let me deal with the question of whether, why should we do this work? We're coming after you. Why should we do this work? I have a boy and a girl. And I remember at one time, my daughter in her teenage years, and I was talking about women this and women that. She looked at me and said, but sometimes you exaggerate.
Wow.
I wonder how many of you young girls are sitting there and say, sometimes these women exaggerate. I didn't say anything. And many years down the road, she started working. She got married. And one day, I received an email from her saying, dear Mama, I am a latecomer to feminism. And the reason she said that is she finally understood why I was doing that work. Because whether you like it or not, if you are a woman, sooner or later, oh, my granddaughter is there. Ona, hi, I'm so happy to see you. My granddaughter who also is a feminist. My children, my grandchildren understand what feminism is about. They understand what my work is about. It's fighting for voice, for rights, for opportunities, for value in life. So my daughter now I'm talking about now works, and her job is to make sure women have access to economic rights. Because I told her, I'm doing it my way, you do it your way. Because without economic rights, we all know that women have no rights. So that's the work she's doing. And I can't say maybe it's not because of me or because of me, but if you watch, you analyze, you see what happens to your sisters up country in the communities, you begin to say, should I really be thinking that things are okay? And so my daughter is a feminist. My son is a feminist. My son is not ashamed to go and stand and cook in the kitchen when his wife is around, because it's his job. He's taking care of his family. And I brought this into my marriage. And this is one thing I tell young people. Don't go into marriage on a blank slate. Put some core values on the table. Put expectations on the table and see how it works. There are more good men than we think who will actually want to discuss how to make a partnership marriage out of marriage. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership where you work together, not work for each other, work together. And so I brought this into my family. My children saw their father cleaning house, washing dishes, cooking, and they've taken it on. And I emphasize those because these are like the core values of a patriarchal system where service is from one person to another. And that's what people think family is. But for me, family is partnership, where people work together. And I see that my children are interested in giving back to community. My son works and gives back to community. My daughter works to make sure that women have access to economic rights. And I'm hoping, and I know that my grandchildren are watching.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I got into a discussion with some male members of my extended family when I shared the details of this talk, and one of them responded and said, "Oh, that feminist discussion is for women abasomieko." And I was so incensed by that response, and because I think it's not just for women. And I said it to him that actually as men, you need to be part of these discussions. You need to empower your daughters and your sons to deal with, to be able to make change and get handle challenges and deal with opportunities when they arise. It's not just and he added that, that's for the Sengas to tell their children. I was so mad at this, but there's that misunderstanding that when we talk about activism, especially when it comes to feminist activism, that it's just that let the girls know about that. You women handle that, and the men stay away. But it's something, as you've clearly demonstrated with the work that your son does, that he's picked up, and you say he's a feminist too, and great job for him as well, that he's doing this to change the outcomes for women around him and for his wife, as well as his immediate family, and it trickles on to the wider social interactions that he has, that he won't be the same as the man who is shut off from sensitivity towards women's issues. So thank you for that. We have
let me.
Yes.
Sorry.
I was going to say we have a comment in the chat, and it says, wow, thank you, doctor, for sharing your experience, how your mom influenced your passion about helping women. Indeed, it was very noble of her. And then that was from Sheila Butunji. And then Ona Alia Kai says, lovely to be here to everyone. So again, we're lovely to host Dr. Tadria, who is sharing her experiences about being feminist and an activist, and how we have just covered how she was influenced by the work of her mother in her own community growing up, and how she has shared some of these lessons with her own children and grandchildren. So really passing the baton on. So,
thank you. And Ona Aliaka is my granddaughter who is studying, passionate about football, and her parents are supporting her passion for football.
Okay, wow, that's lovely. That's like,
that's what being a feminist is.
Is this?
That's what being a feminist is. You give opportunities.
Yes, that's very true. And okay, so I'll take one comment, final comment, then we'll move on to another question. And ladies, please, you can raise your hands and ask the question directly, or you can type them in the chat, whichever is most convenient for you. But we would like to hear some of your voices. So please be brave enough and raise your hand and say something. Dr. Tadria and myself would like to hear from you. So on Tuesday, a gentleman tagged me in a group and said, all women emancipators are non-believers and unfaithful. I commented on his statement, and one lady said, you feminism concentrating on girls, forgetting the boy child. I think that's something that we'll have to touch on, that feminists, based on this comment, that feminism is concentrating on girls and forgetting the boy child. So if you'd like to respond to that, Dr. Tadria, before we move on to some more.
You know, I always really get interested. The man is passionate about the boy child. Let him do something about it. I'm passionate about the girl child. I'm doing something about it. That is a simplistic question. But the real fact of the matter is, as a feminist looking at the ground and how unleveled it is, I really would want everybody to take a trip one day and visit an off village in Katakwi, in Zombo, in Lukunjiri, and see how unleveled the ground is. And then you come back. You see, whether the boy goes to school or not, the system of privileges in patriarchy protect him. They protect him in the sense that he will be allowed to stay on the ground on his father's land and cultivate the land. Do you see what it is? They will protect him that even if he hasn't done very well in school, the system somehow gives him a job because they say he's a man is going to look after his wife. And that's how actually private and public sector came about. That people thought men need jobs to look after the wives, and the wives stay at home. What are the wives staying at home to do? they are actually making it possible for the men to go out to work. Without an effective wife managing your home business, you will not succeed in the public sector. Does anyone put value on that? No. Women are insulted for being goalkeepers and staying at home waiting for the men to come back with a kavera of sugar. But in the meanwhile, you are able to roam around because there is a goalkeeper managing to keep goals coming into your home. She's securing your home.
Mm.
And so what if you gave education to that girl and the two of you were able to go out and generate income? So when you have a privilege, you don't understand how unequal boys and girls in our community are. Let's take the current topic about girls pregnant going back to school. It's a hot topic. And I sit in my chair and literally scream at TV when people are saying, leaders, people are supposed to be compassionate, saying let's not have pregnant girls in school. Compassionate leaders in this country are saying, who wants girls pregnant? They are most of you here are women in this. You've been pregnant. Is it a sickness? How many of you have left your office and gone into ward and delivered? Everybody is talking as if pregnancy is now an illness. Let's confine them in the home. They are ill. They can't understand. Their brains are not functioning. When you listen to that, don't you get angry? I get angry. As a feminist, it enrages me to hear people saying, because we are a moral country, we can't allow girls who are pregnant by men to go back to school. What is that morality looking like for you?
Mm.
And are you going to keep quiet because you don't want to be called a feminist and a men hater? It's not men we hate. Let me be very clear. It's the system that creates opportunities for abuse of children, girl children. We've been, and I see some of my colleagues from up country, Stella is here. We've been in Pakwach, an 11-year-old child has delivered a baby. Do you think that girl is accountable for that pregnancy? And so why do you want to make her accountable for the moral stature of a nation by keeping her out of school? And if you don't fight for these girls' rights to go back to school right now, imagine your nation when those girls are mothers of mothers. Imagine that. And tell me you are not enraged. Tell me you are not angry. I am an angry feminist because of that, but not because I hate men.
I think it's often said that out of anger comes action, and it doesn't mean anger is violence. It's that
Exactly.
That raging feeling that riles you against a status quo that will get you active to change something about it. So I completely understand and appreciate the word anger in that context, that without anger, if you're just passive, we'll let things remain as they are because we're not really touched by it. It doesn't really affect us, but we need to have that positive anger burning in us to take things forward. So I'm going to skip around because this is a really it's a really important topic that we often don't get many people speaking to us about. How can we get ourselves as people following in your footsteps, our children and those who've got grandchildren, to be passionate enough about injustices to do something about it? How can we do it? In your view, how can we do it?
I think, first of all, you as your parent, are you enraged when you hear about this?
I am.
Because I'm not talking about Sophie.
No, I am.
Just,
but
yes, you are.
Yes.
Yeah. But if you as a parent, this what happens to girls doesn't enrage you, how is it going to pass on to your children? That's number one. Secondly, don't be afraid to speak out, because, and this is, Sylvia Tamari is a great feminist and talks about the lies that patriarchy tells you. Patriarchy tells you that if you don't say anything, things will change. The lies that patriarchy says, don't disturb there will be an evolution. Don't upset the system. That's what patriarchy tells you. But really, when I look at where we are today and the impact of inequality between women and men, for me, I see it was worse than when I was growing up in my time. In my primary school, I never had teachers, and we were very close to boys' schools, teachers and boys' students. I don't recall the harassment that I see today in schools. So part of it is, don't be afraid to speak out, because evolution is not going to fix this. And actually, there are many people who want to speak out, but they are afraid of judgment. And this is one thing about women, that we fear being judged, because yes, we get judged very unkindly. And so we fear speaking out. So I would say to young people, speak out. Sooner or later, one day, and we have made changes, as I've said. Speak out, don't be afraid, be bold, but I will also add, be enraged. AWDF, MEMPRO, ACFOD for me are results of my rage against inequality and injustice. And they are three organizations that are functioning very well and serving community, serving women and girls, both national and regionally. And so start something. Even if you are saying, I'm going to go to such a school, I'm going to make a talk, I'm going to pick one girl, because sometimes we think we have no resources until we go out and see what having no resources means. Do you know that if you dedicated to educating a girl from primary 1 to primary 6, it wouldn't cost you more than $200 of your income in 6 years? It wouldn't. So be bold and speak out. And don't fear being judged, because they will judge you anyway. As long as you're a woman, you will still be judged no matter what you do.
Okay, thank you. I hope we can take something from that, not to be afraid to speak out and do something, however small it might appear to be. It's still something. This is one I'm picking up. It's still something along the journey of change and upsetting status quo that we need to upset in order to get injustice and inequality leveled in the society that we live in. Now, I'd like to take you back into parenting, because many of the ladies that we have here and people who will be picking up later when we share the video are parents themselves, and they're having to juggle work responsibilities and everything that comes with work. You've had a very busy and active career, and juggle that with family responsibilities. So, and how did you deal with the parenting and family responsibilities with your work, and what advice can you share with people listening today?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to be very silent on advice, but on sharing how I did it.
Okay.
Because parenting is so tricky. You see great parents with children and you kept saying, how did it happen? And so first, let me start from a point of maybe I was blessed. I got married to a man, or a man married me and I married a man. who cared, who loved children, who cared about rights, about women's rights, about my rights. He was a very good carer. Actually, I think he was a better carer than I was. If a child fell, I would run to hide and he would be the first on the scene. He never worried about having to wipe bottoms of babies. And I'm saying this in its crude way to make it people understand that this is a partnership. If you don't have a partner in your home, your work life is going to be hell. So I had a partner. My first trip abroad when I was lecturing in Makere, an opportunity came when I was 8 months pregnant. And you know, when you are in a lecture in university, you have to attend conferences, you have to write papers, you have to enhance your studies. And if you don't, you remain at lecturer level, and that's it. I met my husband when I was doing my master's degree. That was part of my plan, if I can also answer one of your questions. My plan was I was not going to get married until I have a master's degree. So for me, early marriage was out of the question. And I left Makerere University without a single boyfriend because I had an agenda. And so for me, part of it is that these days, we have mixed agendas. When you have, and I'm going to say it very clearly, when you have a head state saying it's good for people to marry young, for me, it's a mixed message. What is young? So for me, being married, before I know that I have good credentials for a great career, was out. So I met my husband in Cambridge University. And even as we were friends, I did not plan to marry him there because I wanted to finish having my master's. But when it looked like we were interested, both of us, in each other, I started making my goals very clear. I'm going to be a career woman. I am going to take opportunities. And so when we married, he understood who I am and he subscribed to my goals because they were his goals of people achieving their agency. So I started talking about my first opportunity to go out to show what a great parent he was. So 8 months pregnant, I was invited to go to Netherlands to attend a social anthropological meeting. So I come home, I said, actually, I'm not going because the baby will be about 8 weeks. And he looked at me and said, so? I said, where will I leave the baby? And he looked at me and said, what about me? What? You mean I can go? I was excited. Yeah, you can go. I planned. And then guess what? His friend started asking, is her mother coming? And he said, no. So is your mother coming? And he said, no. And you mean you are the one going to look after the baby of 8 weeks? And I remember, and I tell this to every single man and woman. He looked at this man and said, what does her mother know or my mother know about my daughter that I don't know? So girls, tell your husbands, they're supposed to know about their baby better than whoever you bring. So I went, he stayed with this baby. I came back, the baby was in perfect health. And I knew from then that I could trust him. Sometimes, and I'm going to blame the victim here, sometimes we are the ones with the problem. We don't trust the men to do as well as we can do in certain areas. And so we hang on. We don't even allow them to learn. And it's not our fault, because guess what? Being a good mother is what we are known for. And so we are not willing to give it up, because we will be judged. That I'm not caring about being judged that I left an 8-week-old baby. My husband is okay with it. You judge, it's your problem. So because he was a good father, because he understood that I was a human being with human rights, I was able to do anything and go everywhere. And he had no ego. I was married to a man who had no ego, and he could do anything. He was at one time he was the stay-home person, especially towards the latter part. He had no problem. He was a better manager of the home than I was. You know, women come, they want the child to be here, be there. Me, no. He wants the child to be there, let it be there. And this is the thing I tell young people. Sometimes we get stuck on non-issues to your own unhappiness. He wants the child right in the middle of the doorway, let it be there. What harm will it do you? I once had a counseling job when I was living abroad. I was the only senior woman in Uganda, and there was this Ugandan couple, and they were fighting, and they came to me for conversation. So I said, tell me, what do you mostly fight about? And the woman said, this man goes to the office sometimes with 2 different types of socks. And I said, so what? Because the man was saying, she's trying to overmanage me. So I said, give me examples of where she's overmanaging. Because also people have told us this is our work. And so we carry it to our detriment. So the girl said, you know, he goes to the office with 2 different types of socks. What do people think about me? I told her, it's not you wearing 2 types of socks. It is him wearing 2 types of socks. Let people think about him. And if they think it's your fault, you know it's not your fault, because you live with an adult person. And they laughed, because that was their biggest quarrel. And so for me, learning to let go of what I was taught to be a woman's job was very important. For most women, it's very difficult. And for most men, it's literally impossible. You've been taught this is a woman's job, she had better do it. But I lived with a person, I was brought up by parents, first of all, who didn't distinguish boys and girls' job. I got married to a man who didn't distinguish between men and women's job. I traveled a lot, left children with him, and I think my children are quite well balanced. I don't want to say where they are, but I know they are very well balanced. They were brought up in a balanced feminist home. So allow your children to see your good behavior, to see you affirming them, whether they are boys or girls. And they will trust any of the parents. Sometimes children don't trust daddy. Mommy, you're going. We are going to suffer. And then when mommy goes, the daughter becomes a housekeeper when there is an adult man in the house. And when that happens, the woman says, the girl will come back, mommy, when you're not there, I got tired. And then she says, okay, I can't go. You see the story?
Yes.
If your marriage is not a partnership and you are married, your career is going to suffer.
I think that's very, very well said, Dr. Tadria. Thank you for that. Those who are just joining us, we've got Dr. Tadria, who is a feminist and activist who has founded a number of non-governmental organizations, and her bio is quite long. I think the last series of discussions were around family and parenting, and of the questions that we had been that we'd collected to discuss with you, picked up most of that, like what influenced choices with your children, and what challenges you may have faced, or what drove you to make certain decisions about your career. For example, being able to travel. You had, as you've said, you had a husband that was your partner, and this allowed you the freedom to travel and take on a career. So I think I'm just going to pick up one question in terms of education of children, and we'll move on to another area, because I'm conscious that we've already used an hour. It's a very, very interesting discussion, Dr. Tadria. And a question I've got here is how, like many of the young people have this challenge that they're bringing up children in a world that is constantly changing, and whose values look very different from the values that we grew up with. What can you say that can encourage parents in this new age of parenting, balancing the changing dynamics in society, changing values, or at least apparently changing values, and the children that they're bringing up? What would you have to say on that?
Well, again, I don't feel like I'm blaming the victim, but sometimes we give mixed messages to our own children. And I've been watching my children with their children, and I hope they don't mind me using them as an example, especially when I don't see whether they are here. The children of my son go to an international school. And you know international schools in Uganda. The assumption is that everybody is rich, everybody's wealthy, but actually sometimes some people go there just to look for a stable education. And so one of the discussions we have usually on a Sunday at lunch, because they always come here to my home for Sunday lunch. That's where we really do a lot of discussions of passing on norms and values. They talk about a child who holds a phone that costs thousands of dollars. And the pressure for other children then is, can I have a phone? I remember forever my grandchildren, can I have a phone? The other children have a phone, and the parents would say, absolutely not. You are not going to have a phone just because other children have a phone. So starting with parents, what is your own core value? Are you trying to live up to other people's value system? Do you first of all have a value system of how you are going to treat your children? And I know I'm saying this because it's been easy to bring up children where there are no phones, where there are no cinema halls, those of my generation, and I think a few people here will recognize. But when you have this challenge, and you yourself believe in a family of consumption, you are going to have mixed messages for your children. That's why. So for me, what I want to say is, be consistent in nurturing your children. Define for them what you think is right and wrong for them. And believe me, when they go out there, they will be looking back on their shoulder and asking, is this right or wrong according to what I was brought up? Those days when the malls were open and once in a while I would go there, I don't like malls because there is too much choice. You find children wandering, running around in malls on their own. And I would say, what is this? I'm not making judgment, but I'm saying, when you give that kind of parenting, you are free to go anywhere, anytime and wander on your own, then don't start censoring what I pick on my own. So define. define the core values, make sure that the children you are sending out are very solid in the belief system of the family they come from. I'll tell you one thing that really for me helped me as I grew up was, what would my parents think? These days, children don't care what their parents think because some of their parents also haven't given clear guidelines on what is wrong, what is right. There is a very gray shade on everything. Some of us were lucky to be brought up by parents who knew what is right, what is wrong. There is no gray shade in between. And so when you have parents also who haven't clarified their core value principles for their children, it's going to be very difficult. And I know most of you really are at a time where the whole nation has no core values, so to say. We see pregnancy among children and we blame children. We see theft among our workers and we say they are bringing back resources to the country. So we are in a state where there is so much confusion, but you, in your family, with your partner, if you have no partner, as a parent, as a single parent, what are your core values that you know that even as a child exists, the primary level of socialization, because you know there are several levels of socialization. The primary one happens in the family. If children are seeing you fighting, calling your husband and a lazy person, and your wife a person without a brain, and then you expect your child to go out and have some core values, it won't happen. So for me, yes, blaming the victim, it starts in the home because that's the primary socializing system, whether you're a single parent or not, it's the primary. And that's where core values gel. By the time they go to primary schools, they'll be looking back, what will mommy say? I don't know. I think my generation and Victoria, I know when she talked, we had more fear of our parents. What will my parents say? Was for me a core guiding principle. Can you get your children to know that what your parents will say is their core guiding principle?
Okay, thank you very much for that, Dr. Tadria. There's a number of comments that came to the chat. I do apologize, people who sent into chat. I got so taken by Dr. Tadria's conversation that I took my eye off the chat, but I'll go through those messages.
Interject a little, Sophia. I'm noting down everybody who sends their email, so feel free to send your email if you need the recording after.
Okay. Sanya, your volume is a bit low, but she was just saying if you anyone who's put email addresses, will get back to you. Sanya's taking a note of those. Thank you, but I'll go through the other messages. And these ones started when you were talking about pregnant teens going back into school. It says, thank you for speaking about pregnant teens. It irks me when people say that they should stay at home and go back later. What are the chances of them resuming school? What are the chances of a bright future? How is that helping her overcome that challenge? This is something we should really fight about to get our girls what they need. That's from Carol Bayanga, one of our classmates. Then the next one, again, round about the same time, said, I agree with Doctor. I'm also outraged at the way the government is dealing with pregnant girls out of a situation caused by their choices of decisions. Again, about the pregnant teens. Another comment, it says, I was talking, this was, the one before was from iPhone 13, whoever you are, thank you for that comment. Then Fiona says, I was talking to a church leader about pregnant girls going back to school. He laughed and said, how can that be possible? How can women study with our innocent girls? They are going to spoil our daughter. You can imagine when it happens to his daughter. So again, it's a completely different set of reactions from different people within the communities. We had another one that says from Immaculate, says, I'm always grateful whenever I get such knowledge. It has empowered me on the decisions I make as a young woman. So again, thank you, Dr. Tadria. Something that you say or any of our elders say gives us that strength that we need to go and fight the challenges that we face. Then from Livia, another one of our classmates, great insights being shared here. Thank you. From Caroline, hi, will the recording be shared? Missing out due to network complications. So we've got your email address. Yes, the recording will be shared. Hopefully by end of today, or at least by the end of this weekend, we will share and send communications out to you, whoever has shared their email address. Please do put an email address, or you can send it directly. If you don't want it to appear in the chat, send a message either directly to me or to Sanyu. So you can choose either Sanyu Nachiganda, she's on the call, or directly to me. For reasons of privacy, you may not want to share your detail out here, so please do that. Then we have Mercy Adeke. It says, it's so heartbreaking that the leaders who are supposed to be leading the cause to end gender issues, possibly letting us down. It didn't get to an end there. Then Jennifer says, me too having network issues, we'll handle that. And we've had a comment about mixed agendas. Again, I think it's fair to say that the challenges that we're facing in society today exacerbated and made up to be much grander than they are, or they are made so grand that we're overpowered by them because of the constant media presence in our lives. I think, speaking to my mom, they faced similar challenges, but it was at a micro level. It was contained to the home and the village, and it was easier perhaps to overcome them when it didn't feel like the whole world was against you. And I think these are some of the challenges we have. And when it comes to these mixed agendas, we are getting them left, right, and center. And then I think we've got a few more. We've got requests for recordings. Just skipping over those. Okay, I think the rest are really for requests for recordings. We've got, thanks Dr. Tadria for encouraging women to set goals and encourage their spouses to get involved raising their own children. I think this is a key message that we've picked up today. Here it said, then this is from Vanessa. It says, we're here so careful what to say. I don't know what to make of that, but they're being careful what to say, but we'll hopefully be, as Dr. Tadria says, do not be afraid. Let's not be afraid. If it needs to be said, let's be brave and say it. And then thanks, Vanessa, for lending us your mom. This is gold. Again, Vanessa, thank you very much. We've got Farida, who says, a child that grows up with a father's guidance in a home will always have a better perception about men in adulthood. I think this is a very, very fair comment. Thank you, Farida. And then a few more emails. And then Scovia, thank you. It says, thanks to the most level-headed woman while discussing matters concerning a woman. I think, Dr. Tadria, it's very, I think I agree with this. You're very balanced in your approach to women's issues, but whilst putting across your rage about things that are not right and they need to get, it's not skewed, I would say. It's definitely not skewed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then someone, Scovia, says, I know you have done a lot to empower women. And someone says, Jennifer, those girls need counseling to be empowered to dream again. Rebecca says, thank you for the beautiful insights, especially when it comes to balancing work and raising children. Okay, I think I've picked up all the messages. If I've gone too quickly over them, I do apologize. We are running out of time and we really want to hear a lot more from Dr. Tadria. If you've got something to say, please do raise your hand as well. Would like to hear some more voices on the call rather than just the two that we currently have. Would like, Dr. Tadria did specifically ask that we encourage you to participate verbally. So raise your voices and let's get you heard. So Dr. Tadria, any reactions to some of those things that were said in the chat before we move on?
I think I would like to pick on the work-family balance. A lot of research has shown that actually working mothers make good mothers. And I'm trying not to say better mothers because everybody is a better mother. But there is an added value when you have a mother who works. And research has actually affirmed that. And Vanessa, keep raising your voice. Yeah, because I know you are in a very tough working environment. But be bold, all of you, be bold. And when you say, make sure, all of you ladies here, make sure it is so clear that no man is going to appropriate it for himself. You know the words men use, definitely, absolutely, for sure, I believe. You say, I think, don't start with your sentence, I think, I know, I believe. And then when they appropriate it, they know where it came from. But they appropriate your work, they appropriate your concepts, they appropriate your goals because you are not articulating them with the boldness that you should articulate them. So don't ever be afraid to step out of your home. One, you can't be the police officer or everything that goes on, but working mothers, it has shown, make very good parents because they bring something from outside into the home, not just money, but a world view that helps to grow the family.
Thank you very much for that. It's I didn't even know that there was research about that looked into working mothers and what they bring back home to their families, and the fact that they actually make good mothers. And this is often a conflict that many women who have to go out into the work environment face, that conflict, and society doesn't make that conflict any easier. And there's stereotypically the view that the woman's place is at home, and if you veer out, your children are going to suffer, and it makes it very black and white. So it's encouraging to know that the research shows that there's good that working mothers bring home that makes them good mothers as well. So let's be encouraged. Let's be encouraged. We'll move on to, again, thankfully we are in careers and working. And you've mentioned some of this, Dr. Tadria, about owning our opinions or our thoughts so that they don't get appropriated by the men. So here is, I think, one that is along the same vein. What can women do without being aggressive to have men appreciate them and recognize that women have a lot of potential if enabled and inspired to reach for the stars? If there's anything that you have.
You know, Sophie, I read that question.
Yes.
And I have to say it's probably the most difficult question to answer in your list of questions. Because just the question itself shows how unleveled the playing field is. And so let me try to give what I would call maybe a feminist answer. How many, and I will probably start with asking a few questions. Which man is working to be appreciated by a woman? And is just trying to mute himself, not being aggressive, not going out, so that women can appreciate him. Just think. I'm not expecting answers. You can put the answers in the chat. But how many men do you think are going out saying, let me try to be nice so that women can appreciate me? But this is a constant in women's heads, wanting to be appreciated by men, because the way the system has packaged gender relations is that we are the ones to be approved. And the approving is male. Not even your own children, male. So as a feminist, what I fight for is for the value of the work that I do to be appreciated. And I'll start with the long winding example. MEMPRO does a lot of work in the West Nile region, where, like all over Uganda, women are thought to be second-class citizens, even in their homes. They are called goalkeepers because they do nothing. That's what. And so one question I usually ask the men is, in a training we do, is what happens when a wife dies in childbirth? What happens to the baby? And everybody says, the baby goes to the auntie, to the grandmother, to the sister. And my question is, if the men are so smart, why are they not the ones taking the baby? The point is, women have always been the leaders. Women manage homes. Women are the doctors in the homes. Women know how not to poison children, the family, when they are cooking. Women know when the child has a fever before the man even recognizes the child is sick. But there is no value put on that work. So what we are saying as feminists is, stop fighting to be nice in order to be recognized. Fight for your value as a human being. The value of the work you do is, as a woman, actually makes you the leader of this nation. Without women in this nation, it would crumble. We are the leaders in the home. We are the leaders in agriculture. We are the leaders in giving advice. The man comes home, consults, goes to a meeting and says, I have decided. So for me, really being recognized, being non-aggressive to be recognized is non-issue. Fight to have your value recognized. And what I said earlier is again pertinent here. You sit at a table, many of you here, I'm sure, are sitting at corporate tables. How many times do you have to fight for your voice to be heard? Trying to be very nice, waiting to be nice. Do they recognize you? No. The minute you say something, it gets appropriated, the man gets promoted. And you're still trying to be nice, not to be aggressive. But let me tell you, the word aggressive at work for women means you are fighting for your rights. The word ambitious for a man at work means he wants to be on top. Being ambitious is a positive word. Being aggressive is a negative word. So the minute you fight, they label you aggressive, and therefore they label you not nice, and therefore not approved, appreciated. You mute yourself. It's a word used for us to censor ourselves. And so, yes, that's a feminist answer. Because when you take what women do in the workplace, in the home, in the family, in the community, we are tops, but we are made to feel as if we are nothing. So the next thing is for us to be, and as a feminist, to recognize that you have value without even a man's recognition of you. You bring value without recognition. And then you fight for everybody to know that value. And it's possible. Let me tell you, in the place we do, we go there where girls and women are treated like rubbish. By the time we leave, men are working, some homes men are working with their wives because they suddenly realize the value of the work that the women are doing, but also the impact, the negative impact. Imagine always having to be perfect, always having to be working, always having to be available. The negative impacts of that on women's body affects the family and the home. So when people say we are anti-family by fighting for women's rights, we are actually pro-family, because when you protect women's rights, when you protect women's lives, you protect the family.
Mm.
So don't allow people to think you're aggressive. You're just fighting for what is yours. And the words are used to censor you. That's how the system works.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tadria. It's something to take encouragement with, because it's a constant battle. I admit that in some circles you get to a point where you've got to acceptance, where your voice is heard and appreciated as a person, not because you're a woman or this or the other, and then it feels like you're starting again when you join another circle, and it's
exactly.
I think it's encouraging that we shouldn't give up. I know of a particular experience where this woman was made to feel she was actually got negative reactions from her in-laws. Why? Because the husband would never make decisions without saying, let me go back and ask what the wife thinks. And they started to have these, the in-laws started, some of them, not all of them, some of them would had something against her simply because she had a marriage where there was some partnership, a good level of partnership with her husband. And the husband was not afraid to say that he consulted the wife, but it's not always the case that we have this straight away, but it's encouraging that we pick it up. We've got 2 hands, one from Medina. We'll take one from Medina, who had her hand raised first, and then Honorable Search Toleko, Mrs. Search Toleko. So Medina, please unmute and tell us what it is you've got either to ask or to share.
Oh, hello, everybody. I'm just very interested about the difference between ambition and aggressiveness. Actually, just recalled with me with work. I live in the UK and lawyer by profession. And yes, moving up as a Black lawyer in this environment is a fight.
Yeah.
And I'm labeled, I'm a very aggressive woman everywhere I go. So now that affirms actually why I'm that, because even meeting me in work, people they start talking behind you, oh, that Black lady, that. So that affirms that I'm doing something right. I just felt very good actually when you were mentioning the difference between ambition and aggressiveness, because I'm not aggressive because I am aggressive. I'm aggressive because I'm trying to make a point that we are being treated in a different way and we should be treated in the same way. So I just thought I would add on that because it really I felt part of the story.
Great.
Thank you.
And it's a way of making you self-censor yourself in ambition, in speaking out, in moving up. And then you want to be nice. If you're a lawyer in the UK and you're African, you'd better be both aggressive and ambitious.
I'm wearing the hat. It is a tight one, but I'm putting it on.
Thank you very much, Medina. Mrs. Search Toleko, please unmute and tell us. Oops, sorry, I muted you. Sorry, Mrs. Search Toleko.
It's okay. Thank you very much, Sophie, and thank you very much, Hilda, my mentor.
Thank you.
I'm going to make 3 points. The first one starts with my relationship with Hilda. Like I've always told you, Hilda was prefect when I was in senior 1. So if you being a guy as a girl, you can see the difference, but we are friends.
Yeah.
Because she's what, you know, those girls in senior 5, senior 6 used to behave like, she's saying having to be right, having to be perfect. We thought and felt you people were perfect. So it was a joy to emulate you. But having said that, now fast forward several years, we have left Gaza, we are working, and I've been invited to New York to say something. Then I meet Hilda. And I met Hilda, sorry, in Washington. Okay. Now, when Hilda met me, she just started where I was. Victoria, what are you doing here? Where are you staying? This and this. There, and then she started taking me through the paces without judgment, without anything, because I was honestly very young. But somehow I had been invited to a meeting where I had no idea how I got there. But when I found Hilda there, I'm like, oh. So the moral of this part of my story with Hilda is the power of we.
Yes.
This business of I, for Hilda, she's there for you. You want something, ask, and she'll give you 100%. So once again, thank you for being there for me during that time, because it could have led to a lot of things. So the power of we, wherever we are as women, it is important to go with others.
Yes.
So much so that this appropriation of your contribution, which Hilda is talking about. Now, most of you are chairing meetings. If you are the one chairing, make sure that you cheer your fellow women. That is one. Two, some women may still be saying, I think, and all that. It is your job to say, you have finished thinking, now tell us exactly what you want. So this time, if you prompt her to repeat herself, next time she'll say, oh, this woman wants me to be really clear. So she will be clear. So in other words, building others. Then finally, that these young women, Hilda told you about working for women, promoting women, community women, and all that. I've attended a few meetings where the younger women are saying that you, Hilda, and I, and a few others have refused to leave the chairs so that they can sit there. When it was said the first time, I looked at the chair I was sitting on, and I wondered who would want to sit there anyway. Suggesting, start something. There are women and girls wherever you look. How do you do that? Just sort out, what do you want to stand for? You know, when I retired and I said, I'm going to do only 3 things. I do agribusiness, women, and girls. Why? Because it is mostly the women and girls who are in agribusiness. So the world will want to swing you to this, or there is this in health, and then there is that in labor union. Sort out where you want to be. Sort out what is in it for the women, and get however little you get for the women. By the time we all put it together, it will be a lot. So thank you, the year of 91, for organizing this meeting. And to tell you the truth, unless I'm sick or something like that, I can't miss it. Well done.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Let me quickly just add on to what Victoria. Thank you so much, Victoria. You know, sometimes you mentor and you have great results. Thank you. You give me good results, Victoria. But what I wanted to say is, another reason that feminists are not liked, we are labeled as spoiling other people. I am a feminist, but what will I achieve when I'm alone? Feminism is a collective. So part of what we do is, I want to make sure that there are young feminists following in my footsteps. And that one, we are not liked, but you cannot transform a world as a single person. So thank you, Victoria, for bringing that. Always remember, you can't transform the world alone. So part of what people don't like about us is that once we know what is wrong, we want to involve other people in correcting it. And I think there is nothing wrong with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tadria, for that. We're quickly running out of time, but it's been a very interesting conversation, which we are now going to move more into the closing part. But I'll take some comments from the chat, and then we'll move on to the last part. We've got about 15 minutes. So this is from Medina, very interesting opinion. Most men are working to meet their personal goals, that often they overlook the needs of the family or development, and it's left to the woman. And then we have another one. This is from Livia, the power of we. And this is certainly from Mrs. Chuluka, which said it's very important that we go with others and cheer other women on. And then from Jennifer, from my observation out there, when the woman is disempowered, the family becomes disempowered as well. And from Sheila, this is very inspiring. Thank you again for the participation, Dr. Tadria and Mrs. Chichiliko, and everyone who's had their made their voice heard. And then Matilda, wow, it's humbling. So thank you again. Keep your comments coming and do raise your hands. We want to hear your voices as well. It changes the dynamics of the conversation. So Dr. Tadria, we've talked a lot about your work as a feminist and activist, and I think it defines the work that you do, who you are, how you've interacted with your family and people around you. But one of the things that was mentioned when we were talking about you, even before we approached you to come onto the program, was that you've worked beyond the Ugandan borders. What would you wish for Ugandan women and girls to learn from some of the other cultures that you've worked with? Is there something that you've seen that we could take a lift from in the other cultures where you've worked with girls and women?
Well, let me say, unfortunately, Africa as a continent in general, and the world actually, is that when it comes to gender issues, we are almost all at the same level. Violence is all over the world. Discrimination and marginalization of women, muting women's voices that's why it becomes a gender issue. But one thing I really, that I wish could be transformed in Uganda is the judgmental nature of Ugandans. And it is the system in which we are. We use this system in our homes. We take it to the office. You judge a woman in the office the way you judge your wife at home. You judge everybody. We are very judgmental. And I really wish that is one of the things that that we could change. And because of judgmental, we limit aspirations, especially aspirations of girls and women.
Okay, thank you for that. So it's about being judgmental, so we don't limit our achievements. We've got a comment here which I will take, and then we will we'll move on to the next question.
Sophie,
yes, please.
Please read this comment from my daughter, because she is yeah. Can I read it?
Yes, please, go ahead.
This was a message from Vanessa. It somehow ended in my DM. Dr. Mom, I agree with the women seeking approval in a way that men just don't. I won't say it's looking for approval generally, not necessarily seeking approval of only men. Complex, dynamic, whatever the case. You are so correct about the word aggressive being used to force self-censorship. But it is 2020, and we are politely going to call that behavior out, especially when you are Black. That's my daughter.
Yes, thank you. I love the attitude, and she makes a very good point. It's 2022. We can start fresh. It's never too late. Thank you very much, Vanessa. And we'll move on to the next series. So the work that you've done has spanned continents, and you've set up NGOs, which you've talked about. Is there anything that we haven't, that you'd like to tell us about these organizations that you've set up that we haven't already covered? Because I know it's very important work that you've done through those organizations, and I wouldn't want us to part without you having told us something in addition to everything else about specifically those NGOs that you founded, the kind of the biggest lessons or the drawbacks in that NGO world.
I think for me, the lessons from here, from my own work, is one, to set yourself very high standards. I set myself high standards when I started those NGOs. African Women Development Organization, we fundraise and we give money to any woman within Africa. And it was a result of feminist rage about women's lack of access to resources. MEMPRO, I started it because I was just too enraged about the violence that happens in schools of learning. But setting myself high standards of professionalism, if you go to MEMPRO, if you meet a MEMPRO girl, you will see a difference in the kind of grooming, in the kind of professionalism, in the kind of stewardship that they carry. And as a result, I retired from it 2 years ago because I know I have mentored people well enough to run an organization, and I think it's still going strong. So accountability, stewardship, professionalism must always stand out when you start something. Don't start something just because you're angry, and then set the standards first. Don't measure yourself too low. I always tell my workers, this is not government. This is a corporate entity in which standards matter, delivery matters, stewardship of people's resources matter. We've never lost a single shilling in MEMPRO, and when we did once, the person was fired for stealing from the organization $75. So, second part, don't start an organization that is going to bear your identity alone. It will die. So NWDF has stood, now it's about 25 years. ACFOD is more than 30 years, and I don't even go there. MEMPRO, I'm sure will still be alive. 2 years, I don't go there. The minute you think it's yours, it will die. It has to have other people.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So set very high standards, and then don't set an organization that will bear your identity alone. Thank you. So we'll move on to something that I know you're passionate about, which is the book that you've recently published. Tell us about it. We've got a very short amount of time left, but let's not spoil it for the potential readers. But tell us about the book that you've recently published.
Well, first of all, one of the questions you asked is what pushed me. Actually, this kind of conversation is what pushed me. I mean, by now I should have 100 books because people have actually written books and quoted me. And I kept saying, okay, I don't have to write. But I suddenly realized that people really want to know, how did I do this? I realized there was a story. And so, are we still on? Oh.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. So it's going to be in Amazon on Tuesday. And within 2 weeks, I'll be having hard copies. And I'm hoping that you'll all be invited and participate in the launch, which we are planning early March. We are going to put some copies in Aristoc. I'm expecting at least 50 copies in the next 2 weeks. Victoria will guide me on how to sell books. And for your interest, every book you buy will be a donation to MEMPRO, which will be a donation to girls. That's what I'm leaving for MEMPRO.
Okay, thank you very much. So the book is called Stand, Bringing African Women's Rights into the Modern Age. And as Dr. Tadria says, it will be available from Amazon on Tuesday. And we'll get copies locally here in Uganda, Aristoc, and a launch in March. So we do look forward to this. It's always inspiring to read books that are written from a very personal perspective, from people in Africa with real issues and real experiences, I would say. So, Dr. Tadria, we have enjoyed spending this time with you. You have shared a lot of your experiences, but there's always room for more next time if we ever have an opportunity to chat, because there's a lot we haven't even talked about. But one of the things we'd like to close with, which then we'll move on to introducing our next guest, is 2 things I would say. How have you dealt with with friendships and relationships. And then secondly, another question that I'll give the two questions to you, and then you can see how you take them. Dealing with friendships when you have busy careers and family. And then just to close off, any interesting travel experiences or memorable travel experiences that you'd like to close us down with.
Okay. First, with friends, I tell friends, once you are my friend, I will not lose you until you are dead. That's really my principle. Victoria here is an example. I don't lose friends until they are dead.
Mm.
And in any way I can appear, it may be 20 years, but when I appear, I'll make sure you remember I am your friend. Let me share a quick travel experience. My first travel to go to Cambridge and my encounter with an escalator. I've never healed from that encounter. Imagine in 1970, you've never seen an escalator, you don't know what it is, and you go to Zurich, and there is this escalator, and I have my heavy luggage on both arms. I stood in front of an escalator, and I literally didn't know what to do. I watched it going up. I would put my foot, and it would go. Until a good man behind me came and lifted my heaviest suitcase and said, "Give me this one." I watched him put his foot on the next, and I stumbled onto the escalator. Up to today, when I see an escalator, I am traumatized. So, yes.
Thank you.
I will never forget that one.
Yes. And I think travel has a way of giving us memorable experiences, and some of them, they're really good, and some of them can be quite traumatic, but it just goes to show that you can move on beyond that first experience. And as the people from my culture say, the Baganda, so it's about traveling and bringing back stories that you can tell the grandchildren and people around you. So it builds it in the ways that you cannot build. So before we say goodbye to you, Dr. Tadria, I'd like to invite Sanyu to introduce our next guest. Sanyu?
Yes, I'm right on. First, I know there's very little time, but I want to thank Dr. Tadria very, very much. I think what it's made me realize is that perhaps I am not angry enough, because I am, I'm really, really inspired by the story that you've told us. And I feel like maybe we need another session. If other people don't want another session like this, I'm quite happy to come myself to listen, and to learn. But I'd like now to introduce our the guest who's going to come for the next month. She's called Dr. Rachel Mussoke. Dr. Rachel Mussoke was a pediatrician in Nairobi. I think she's on here, so I'm asking her to show her. Let me just turn off my video. I'm asking her to turn on her video so that we could see her. Yes, she's. Sophia, is it possible to keep the focus on Dr.
Yes,
Rachel?
yes.
Yes, so Dr. Rachel is going to be our next guest for the month of February. She's going to come on the 19th of February, so please look out for that. I'm not saying a whole lot about her, but some of you who are in Kennedy, you knew Samali Mussoke, who I think I grew up knowing as Samali Namudu. This is her mom. Others of you might know Chigundu Mussoke, who's now the director of Kampala Music School. This is Dr. Rachel is also Chigundu's mom. So please tune in and let's hear from Dr. Mussoke next month. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Sanyu. And Dr. Rachel Mussoke, we are looking forward to you next month. As Sanyu says, we are not saying much about her until next month. You'll have to join us next month to get to hear her story and her pearls. I'd like to really, really thank Dr. Tadria for joining us today. It's very humbling that people as busy as you and Mrs. Suchtoleko and my mom actually take the time to sit with us, because you could be doing so many other things, but to sit with us and share a little bit about what you've done and what your experiences have been, with the view that we can learn from them, benefit from them, and avoid any troubles that may be on our journey if you've warned us about them, because you yourselves saw those types of troubles along your journeys. So thank you very much, Dr. Tadria. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'll read the final comments on the group, and we'll call it a day for this month. So we had one from Dr. Tadria from Livia. Thank you, Dr. Tadria. I feel inspired. Jennifer, thanks, Doctor, for the great insights about women empowerment and the girl-child issues. From Medina, very good learning engagement. From Akusa, thank you, Dr. Tadria. This has been enlightening and most encouraging. Daphne, I'm so proud to have been mentored by you, Dr. Hilda. I walk with my head raised high. It's a golden treasure having you on this planet. Stay blessed. From Juliet, Dr. Tadria and Sophie, thank you so much. This was a very interesting meeting. And then there's one, I think it was meant from Juliet to Medina. Good to see you. And then Daphne, I'll be in that session with you. So, and Vanessa says, we need another, please. And Vanessa is your daughter, isn't it? We certainly did need more sessions, but whatever we can get, we are thankful and grateful for. Daphne, thank you very much to the organizing committee. And Irene B, thank you, Dr. Tadria, real pearls of wisdom. Thanks, Sanyu, Sophia, and the whole team, that's Akusa and Claire, for organizing. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Doctor, that's Mercy. Matilda, thank you so much for this amazing opportunity. Very educative discussion from both doctors. This is Hussein, Esther, Kusima. Thank you, Dr. Tadria. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Tadria. I would like to thank the team that we work with to organize these sessions. Claire, Akusa, Livia, and Sanyu, thank you very much. If any of you has got our contacts, please do get in touch. If you've got suggestions of guests that we can have and we can learn from, please do send them our way. We'll be more than happy to organize something with them. And please do not feel that this is just for women's sessions. It just so happens that the guests that we've had are women. We are really looking forward to listening from the men out there, our fathers, our uncles, our fathers-in-law. Please do get them to get in touch. I think women have just been quicker to respond to our call to join than the men are, but we would like to hear from them as well. Thank you very much. Our next session is on the 19th of February. God willing, that's a Saturday. I think it's the 3rd Saturday of February with Dr. Rachel Mussoke. Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Hilda, and all of you for joining us today. Have a good weekend and see you next time.
Thank you so much for inviting me and listening to me, everybody. Be blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.